The evening rush at James's Bistro, a high-end restaurant in San Diego, was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the polished wooden tables, each draped in crisp white linen and set with gleaming silverware. Waiters moved gracefully through the room, balancing trays of beautifully plated meals, their footsteps barely audible against the marble floor. The air was filled with the gentle hum of conversations, clinking glasses, and soft laughter. At the center of the room sat a group of 3 women, their laughter louder than the rest. At the head of the table was Emma Carter, a woman who radiated wealth and confidence. Her diamond necklace sparkled under the chandelier light, and her designer watch peeked out from beneath the sleeve of her tailored blazer. With a perfectly manicured hand, she sipped her wine, her sharp eyes scanning the room as if judging whether it met her standards. To Emma, the world was a hierarchy, and tonight, she was firmly at the top. At the far end of the room, a young waitress named Olivia Martinez was weaving through the maze of tables. Her name tag was barely visible against the dark fabric of her uniform. Olivia had been working double shifts for weeks, saving every penny for college. Tonight, her exhaustion was evident in the way she stumbled slightly while setting down a tray of glasses. Emma noticed her, and her lips curled into a faint smirk. To Emma, people like Olivia were invisible until they made a mistake. The evening took a sharp turn when Olivia arrived at Emma's table to deliver their entrees. "Here you are, ladies. I hope you enjoy your meals," Olivia said, her voice trembling slightly but her politeness unwavering. Emma raised a single eyebrow, inspecting the plate in front of her. "Excuse me," she said, her tone cutting through the air like a knife. "Is this supposed to be medium rare? It looks closer to well done. And why is it taking so long? We've been waiting for—" Olivia blinked, caught off guard. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me take this back." "Oh, spare me the apology," Emma interrupted, her friends exchanging amused glances. "Honestly, it's not that hard to get an order right. Or is it?" Olivia's cheeks flushed a deep red. The room seemed to hold its breath for a moment, the tension palpable. But in the corner of the room, a man in a simple gray suit sat quietly, watching. His expression gave nothing away, but his gaze didn't waver. The moment was far from over, and what happened next would change everything. Olivia's hands trembled as she carefully lifted Emma's plate from the table. "I'll have this fixed right away," she murmured, turning toward the kitchen. But Emma wasn't finished. "Unbelievable," Emma muttered, her voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "They hire anyone these days, don't they? I mean, how hard is it to carry a plate without looking like you're going to drop her friends?" Emma leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying the attention. "It's like she thinks a smile and a stammer will earn her a tip. Honestly, I should report her for ruining the entire evening." At the kitchen door, Olivia hesitated, her grip tightening around the plate. Her face burned, and she could feel tears welling in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had dealt with rude customers before, but something about Emma's cold, deliberate cruelty cut deeper than usual. From his table in the corner, the man in the gray suit observed the entire scene. His face remained impassive, but his fingers tapped lightly against the edge of his glass. His movements were slow and deliberate, as though he were considering every detail of what he had just witnessed. Back at Emma's table, the complaints continued. "And did you see how she walked?" Emma scoffed, rolling her eyes, like she was barely holding it together. "If she can't handle working in a place like this, she should find a job that suits her level, like flipping burgers." The surrounding diners grew visibly uncomfortable. Some whispered to their companions, while others glanced toward Emma's table with disapproval. One couple nearby even exchanged a look before shaking their heads in silent agreement. But Emma was oblivious, or perhaps she didn't. Moments later, carrying a fresh plate of food, She placed it down in front of Emma with as much composure as she could muster. "Here you are, ma'am. I had the chef remake it for you. I hope this meets your expectations." Emma gave the plate a cursory glance before shrugging. "I suppose it'll do," she said, her tone dismissive. "But next time, try to get it right the first time. And for heaven's sake, learn how to carry yourself. You represent this establishment, and quite frankly, you're doing a terrible job." Olivia forced a smile, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course, ma'am. I'll do my best." As Olivia walked away, Emma turned back to her friends, grinning. It's amazing how people can be so incompetent yet still think they deserve respect. At that moment, the man in the corner stood up. His movements were calm, almost calculated, as he made his way toward the restaurant's manager, who had been hovering near the bar. He leaned in close, speaking in a low voice, and the manager's eyes widened slightly. Emma, meanwhile, continued her conversation, unaware that her evening was about to take an unexpected turn. But the man wasn't just any diner, and his quiet intervention was about to shake the room. The manager, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, nodded respectfully as the man in the gray suit spoke. It was a quiet exchange, but those seated nearby noticed the subtle shift in the manager's expression, from curiosity to something more serious. After the brief conversation, the man returned to his table, his steps deliberate and calm. Meanwhile, Emma had moved on to another topic, regaling her friends with stories of her recent vacation. "Oh, the Maldives were stunning," she said, twirling the stem of her wine glass. "You wouldn't believe how exquisite the private villas were. And the staff? Flawless. Unlike what we've seen here tonight." Her words were punctuated with a smirk, and her friends giggled in agreement. Across the room, Olivia was quietly restocking trays of glasses, her hands still trembling. She avoided looking in Emma's direction, focusing instead on her task. She had perfected the art of compartmentalizing her emotions during shifts, but tonight, it felt nearly impossible. It wasn't until Emma and her friends requested the check that the atmosphere in the restaurant began to shift. The manager himself approached their table, accompanied by Olivia. He carried a tray with a bottle of champagne and an envelope. Arched in confusion, though a trace of smugness lingered on her face. "Ladies," the manager began, his voice steady and professional, "compliments of the house." Emma's friends gasped in delight, and one of them clapped her hands together. "Oh, how lovely!" In her chair, clearly pleased. "Well, it's about time someone recognized exceptional patrons," she said, shooting Olivia a pointed glance. But the manager's next words silenced the table. "This gesture comes directly from the owner of James's Bistro," he said, placing the envelope in front of Emma. "He's been observing your experience tonight and wanted to personally address it." Emma's smile faltered. "The owner?" she repeated, her voice tinged with surprise. Before the manager could respond, the man in the gray suit approached their table. The room fell silent as diners turned to watch. He stood there, his posture relaxed but commanding, and offered a polite smile. "Yes, the owner," he said, his voice calm but firm. "My name is James Donovan, and this is my restaurant." Emma's jaw tightened, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Oh, Mr. Donovan, I didn't realize," she trailed off, clearly scrambling for words. James gestured toward Olivia, who stood quietly to the side, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Olivia here happens to be my niece," he said, his tone even. "She's one of the hardest working people I know, and I take great pride in having her as part of my team." The color drained from Emma's face. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier laughter replaced by an awkward silence. James didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I couldn't help but overhear the way you spoke to her tonight," he continued. "And while I understand that mistakes happen, I believe there's a way to handle them with respect and kindness." Emma fumbled for a response, But before she could say anything, James leaned in slightly, his calm demeanor unyielding. Money might buy you luxury, but it doesn't entitle you to belittle those who work to provide. The room was utterly silent, every diner frozen in place, hanging on James's words. Emma, who moments ago radiated superiority, now sat stiffly, her confidence visibly shaken. Her fingers fidgeted with the stem of her wine glass, her carefully composed demeanor crumbling under the weight of the moment. James straightened, his eyes sweeping over Emma's friends, and then the rest of the restaurant. "Respect is the foundation of this establishment," he said, his voice resonating throughout the room. "Not just respect for the food we serve, but for the people who make it possible, the chefs, the servers, the dishwashers. Every single one of them is integral to what you all enjoy here tonight." Emma opened her mouth as though to respond, but no words came. Instead, one of her friends shifted uncomfortably, breaking the tension. "I'm sure Emma didn't mean any harm," the woman offered weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. James tilted his head slightly, his gaze unflinching. "Perhaps not," he said, his tone measured. "But intent doesn't erase impact. Words have power, and when they're wielded carelessly, they can leave lasting damage." He turned to Olivia, who had been standing off to the side, her face a mix of embarrassment and quiet gratitude. "Olivia, you handled yourself with professionalism and grace tonight, even under unfair scrutiny. I want you to know how proud I am." Olivia blinked back tears, nodding slightly. She didn't trust her voice enough to speak, but her gratitude was palpable. James then shifted his focus back to Emma. "Now as for you," he said, his tone losing none of its civility, "I could ask you to leave and not return, but I believe there's a better lesson to be learned." Emma's eyes widened slightly, and her friends exchanged worried glances. James gestured toward the champagne bottle the manager had brought over earlier. "This was meant to be a gesture of goodwill," he explained, "but instead, I'll be donating its value, and your entire tab, to a local organization that supports young women like Olivia, who are working hard to build a better future for themselves." Murmurs rippled through the restaurant. Some diners nodded in approval, while others exchanged glances of surprise. Emma finally found her voice, though it wavered. "Mr. Donovan, I think this is a bit extreme. I didn't mean—" James held up a hand, silencing her gently but firmly. "This isn't about punishment, Ms. Carter. It's about accountability. And I hope this moment gives you an opportunity to reflect on the kind of legacy you want to leave behind." His words were calm, but they carried an undeniable weight. Emma looked down at her hands, avoiding his gaze. Her friends sat in uneasy silence, clearly unsure how to respond. James took a step back, addressing the room once more. "Let tonight serve as a reminder to us all," he said. "Kindness costs nothing, but it can mean everything. You never know what someone is carrying, or who might be watching." The room erupted into soft applause. It wasn't raucous or dramatic, but it was genuine. Patrons nodded in agreement, some even smiling at Olivia as if to silently show their support. Emma, however, sat frozen in her seat, her earlier bravado reduced to silence. She wasn't used to being challenged, much less in public, and the experience left her visibly shaken. James turned back to Olivia. "Take a short break," he said gently. "You've earned—" Olivia hesitated, then nodded, slipping away toward the back of the restaurant. As she disappeared through the kitchen doors, her posture seemed a little straighter, her steps a little. But the lesson didn't end there. The ripples of this moment would carry far beyond the walls of James's. The evening slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but something had shifted in the air. Patrons whispered to one another, not about the food or the decor, but about what they had just witnessed. The quiet man in the gray suit had reminded them of something profound. Decency and respect weren't just virtues. They were essential. Emma remained at her table, uncharacteristically silent. Her friends awkwardly exchanged glances, unsure of how to proceed. They avoided addressing the moment directly, but the discomfort was written on their faces. Emma stared at her untouched plate, the taste of humiliation stronger than any meal she could have ordered. At the back of the restaurant, Olivia leaned against the wall near the kitchen, taking deep breaths to steady herself. Her manager approached her with a warm smile. "You handled yourself beautifully tonight," he said. "Not many could have stayed so composed." Olivia nodded, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you," she replied. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "They noticed," the manager assured her. "Especially Mr. Don." In the dining area, James Donovan returned to his seat, casually sipping from his glass of water, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. A few patrons passed by his table on their way out, offering polite nods or quiet words of appreciation. One diner, an older gentleman, stopped briefly. "You don't see people stand up like that often anymore," he said. "That was something special." James smiled faintly. "It wasn't about standing up," he said. "It was about reminding everyone, myself included, that kindness is the least we can offer." As Emma and her friends rose to leave, she avoided looking at anyone directly. Her cheeks were still flushed, her confident stride reduced to a tentative shuffle. At the door she paused, glancing back at the room she had once commanded. For the first time she seemed smaller, quieter, less sure of herself. The staff and diners didn't look at her with pity or disdain. Instead, there was a shared understanding, a collective hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd walk away from this moment a little different. Outside, the night air was crisp, and Emma paused on the sidewalk. Her friends tried to console her, offering platitudes that rang hollow, but she waved them off, saying she needed them. Meanwhile, inside James's bistro, Olivia returned to the floor with a newfound confidence. She moved between tables, smiling warmly at patrons, who now saw her not just as a waitress, but as a young woman with strength and dignity. The night ended quietly, but the lesson lingered long after the doors closed. Some patrons left bigger tips than usual, others exchanged kind words with staff they might have overlooked before. And Emma? She walked away humbled. Her world shifted in a way she never anticipated. James watched from the window as the last guests departed. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply sat there, satisfied that a small but important point had been made. The day, it's not about wealth, status, or power. It's about how you treat the people who cross your path, no matter where they come from or who they are. And maybe, if we all remembered that, the world would feel a little kinder,